Hello, my friend, listening quietly in the middle of a heavy day. If you are an Aries, I want to tell you something your soul has been waiting a long time to hear again. A truth that doesn't shout, yet carries enough power to shake the parts of your life you thought were unchangeable. For years, you have stood firm in places darker than most people will ever understand. But the time has come for the light to find you, even before you realize how tired you truly are. Take a moment, let your mind settle, because what I'm about to say isn't meant to be heard only with your ears. It's meant to be felt. It's meant to help you look at yourself with a new kind of vision, softer, clearer, more honest. November of 2025 is approaching like a shift in the season, carrying a message meant only for Aries, the one who has walked too far in silence. To understand that message, we need to return to the first chapter of this story, the place where 13 quiet years have shaped you in ways no one ever saw. Let's begin there. Silence often settles over the souls that have walked too long in the dark, and Aries understands that more than anyone. There are roads where people only see your strength on the surface, while you carry an entire sky of unnamed wounds behind your ribs. November 2025 is approaching like a warm breath, a signal the universe sends to hearts that have endured far too much for far too long. Not the sound of thunder, not the rush of a storm, just a quiet shift, like light slowly spreading across a room that has been dim for years. 776 weeks have passed since the old cycle began, long enough for a soul to learn how to stand on trembling feet, how to smile through days that felt like collapse, how to pretend to be all right so the people you love could rest easy. You never realized that across these 13 years, you have walked through lifetimes of trials without ever asking for a title. You simply lived, yet every step was a battle. You simply breathed, yet every breath was a silent prayer sent upward. In November 2025, a great door will close, not with noise, but with a gentle shift inside your chest. You will sense that you no longer stand where you once stood. What used to weigh you down will drift away like a faint shadow behind a pane of glass. A long chapter reaches its final page in the simplest way. No force, no drama, just the touch of a hand on your shoulder, reminding you that the difficult journey you've carried for so long is finally allowed to rest. If you listen a little deeper, you'll notice something unusual. Your mind grows quiet in a way it never has before. Not the quiet of giving up, but the quiet that appears when a flame is about to be lit again. People often think Aries is only about power, but your greatest strength has never been the roar. It has always been the endurance nobody sees. That is why the universe chooses you for this new doorway. Not because you are perfect, but because your heart never stepped back, even when your inner light was only a thin thread holding on. This November isn't just a date on the calendar. It feels like the first morning after a long winter, when the ground is still cold, but the sky has started to change color. It gives you an unfamiliar feeling, a quiet knowing that something in you is about to shift, even if no one says a word. You can sense it rising from within, as if your soul has touched a threshold you haven't dared to hope for in years. When that awareness settles in, an old boundary melts away, making space for a new understanding to form. Not a rush of excitement, but a soft recognition. Your heart opens just a little, enough for the first ray of light to slip through after being buried under layers of responsibility and sacrifice. As that warmth reaches your hands, you'll feel yourself moving into another landscape, not crossing a line, but drifting gently, guided by an unseen current. The listener won't be able to pinpoint the exact moment the story shifts, yet the change will spread through the air around them, quiet but undeniable. And there, in that soft place just ahead, a deeper chapter waits to unfold, as if the universe is inviting Aries to step further into the light you once believed was never meant for you. Silence has become the coat you've worn through all those long years, even though, inside, A fire has been begging for one chance to rise again. 13 years have passed, and you moved through life like the keeper of storms that never belonged to you. Where others stepped back to avoid the impact, you stepped forward, quietly taking the shock for them. When you wanted to speak your truth, you swallowed it, as if the peace of the entire world depended on your restrained breath. When an opportunity appeared, you looked around first, worried that if you stepped too boldly, someone else might break. All those small choices gathered into a life much narrower than the soul of an Aries who was meant to be as wide as the sky. There were nights when you sat with yourself in the dark and whispered a question only you could hear. Where did my true self go? The child who once dared to dream loud, the spirit who believed their light could open paths no one had ever walked. Did that part of you get lost while you were too busy holding everything else together? Quiet sacrifice makes people assume you never tire, but only you know how it feels to live as if you're folding yourself smaller and smaller just to fit into a room built for someone else. Still, you kept going. Not from fear, but because some tender part of your heart believed you were meant to carry these burdens. You called it responsibility. You called it maturity. Yet beneath all that endurance lives a truth you can't ignore. To protect the peace, to prevent things from falling apart, to keep others from getting hurt, you chose to shrink yourself. A powerful flame pressed down into a small candle that gave just enough light for others to see, but never enough warmth for you. People say Aries burns hot, yet the hottest part of you is the one you've hidden most carefully. You guard it, as if your fire is a sacred thing that must not be touched. You fear that if it spreads, life around you will shift in ways you can't control. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being too intense, fear of breaking something fragile. But look closer. These 13 years were not proof of weakness. They were years of learning how to endure, how to stand firm in silence, how to love through sacrifice. No medals were given for that. Yet any wise soul knows, the strongest spirits are the ones who learn to hold themselves back to protect the hearts around them. Now, as you reflect, there might be a sting of sadness. You can see what you traded away. A part of your essence that once glowed like sunrise has faded into embers. Still, the moment you see it clearly, something like a door cracks open. Not a door leading outward, but one that leads you back to yourself. Lean a little closer, and you'll feel something beginning to move deep within you, slowly, like warmth returning to places untouched by light for years. Those 13 dark years were not only loss, they were soil. Soil that protected the strongest parts of you, waiting for them to ripen. Now those parts are rising, gently, breaking through the surface. Without any warning or noise, another current begins to reach for you, as if your soul is being invited into a deeper layer, softer, brighter. A place where everything you've kept buried is finding its way back to the surface, guiding you forward into the story you are finally ready to write with the light that has waited so long to return to you. Stay still for a moment, and you'll hear a fear you've avoided for years. Not the fear of failing, not the fear of being left behind. For Aries, the thing that makes your heart tremble is the very thing you were born to carry, your own light. A light that was once as clear as childhood laughter, as bright as early spring fire, as fearless as the first spark rising into the sky. Yet, as the years passed, as advice piled up around you, as your heart learned to tighten itself piece by piece, that light was pushed into a hidden corner, like a secret, like something better left unseen. People around you made you believe that strength can hurt the world, that honesty is too sharp, that being real makes life complicated. You heard those warnings so many times they began slipping into your thoughts. You started looking at your own fire with suspicion, as if it could burn everything down just by being itself. You forgot that fire doesn't only destroy, it warms, it illuminates, it creates life. Time moved on, and you grew cautious with your own nature. Not cautious from wisdom, but cautious from fear. fear of being misunderstood, fear of being too intense, fear of hurting someone just by living in your truth for a single moment. So the flame inside you folded in on itself, bit by bit, like a small candle in a wide, empty room. It still burns, still steady, just not as radiant as before. You kept it small as a way to protect yourself from your own power. Here's the strange thing about strong souls. They often believe cutting themselves down is an act of kindness. You've done that too. Stepping back, softening your voice, slowing your steps, hoping your gentleness would make the world around you easier. But in return, you dimmed the brilliance the universe placed in you from the very beginning. That brilliance wasn't meant to cause trouble. It was meant to help others find direction when everything feels chaotic. Inside you, the flame never died. It's only been buried beneath layers of doubt time quietly built around you. Some nights, when everything is still and no one is watching, you hear it again. That familiar whisper, the voice of your true nature, soft yet steady, calling you back to the truth that light is not a barrier. Light is an invitation to live more fully. Imagine standing alone in a dark room, facing that tiny flame you once made small. As you step closer, it quivers, as if asking whether you still believe in it. Then a gentle warmth spreads across the air, not forceful, not sudden, just enough to remind you that the thing you feared has been the very thing holding you together during the hardest nights of your life. In that quiet, you understand that you don't need to put the light out. You only need to learn how to hold it with intention, because that light is the part of you you forgot, the part that leads you toward a wider life, the part that lets you lift others simply by being real. Once you stop pushing it into the shadows, it begins to spread, smooth and steady, like a late-night radio signal drifting through the dark. From that still point, the story starts to flow into a deeper layer, where you begin to understand what it truly means to reclaim a power that has slept inside you for far too long. A thin stream of light reaching out, guiding you forward into the healing your soul has waited ages to touch. Something unusual is forming around you, like the thin layer of air that begins to change color before sunrise. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just a subtle, steady feeling, as if the universe is standing quietly behind you, watching to see how ready your heart has finally become. 13 years of shrinking yourself, of silence, of holding everything in, have trained you to grip a sword of survival, a sword for blocking, a sword for enduring. A sword that reminded you, again and again, that the world outside was never simple. Then November 2025 arrives in the softest way. No commands, no pressure, just an invitation. A different kind of invitation from anything you've ever received before. It feels like someone gently placing something in your hand, familiar, yet new. Not heavy like steel, not cold like metal, but carrying a depth of energy that makes you pause long enough to feel it. This spear isn't meant for battle anymore. It isn't here to help you fight old wounds or protect yourself from people who never understood you. The spear was made to open paths, to touch places untouched by human footsteps, to guide the souls still confused by their own darkness. You were familiar with the old sword because it belonged to the version of you that had to survive storms without shelter. But when your fingertips brush the body of the spear, you know instantly that you've stepped into a new chapter, one where strength is no longer measured by endurance, but by your ability to lead. Some people spend a lifetime learning only how to hold a sword. Aries was chosen to carry something higher. The spear symbolizes a place at the front, a vision that reaches beyond the limits in front of you, a surge of creation that rises from a soul that has known enough pain to understand the tenderness of others. It also symbolizes a responsibility that cannot be handed to anyone else, because only hearts that have cracked open know how to protect a growing light. If you listen deeply enough, you'll realize the spear isn't asking you to become someone new. It only asks you to be yourself, but the version of you that no longer hesitates in front of your own power. The version that refuses to let fear of your light drag you back into smaller rooms. The version that steps forward without asking for permission, without needing applause, without dimming to match anyone's comfort. Many Aries have lived as the ones picking up the pieces of their own life just to walk another day. From the survivor you've had to be for so long, the universe now calls you into a different role. The role of a guide, a path setter, a leader not because you crave, cower, but because your inner light has finally reached the point where it must illuminate its own direction. The spear in your hand doesn't make you aggressive, it makes you calm, grounded, clear. You realize you no longer need to tear down the darkness. You only need to lift your light high enough for the darkness to step back on its own. In that understanding, you see why you were chosen. Because your heart is kind enough not to turn strength into harm, mature enough not to turn wounds into weapons. It's strange, almost tender, to look back and realize that every step you took, even the painful ones, carried you to this point. A point where proof is no longer required. Only the willingness to walk toward the light that has been waiting for you. Like a door opening softly, it draws you deeper into a sacred journey your soul has longed for all these years. A journey where a new layer of meaning is quietly beginning to call your name. There is something strange about life. The things that truly belong to us sometimes slip away right at the moment we are not mature enough to hold them. They disappear like a thin mist, leaving behind a quiet space in your chest that has no name. Aries knows that feeling well. Along the road of growing up, you dropped a few beautiful things your heart still keeps tucked away in its deepest corner, even while your voice insisted you had moved on. The universe never forgets what carries the imprint of your soul. People think time takes everything, but time only makes the truth clearer. What once left you never fully vanished. It has been standing in another dimension, waiting for you to become stronger, calmer, wiser, so you could receive it the way it was meant to be received. Sometimes that gift is a person whose footsteps once made your heartbeat change. Someone you loved with a fiery heart but didn't yet know how to hold with steady hands. Back then you were too quick, too intense, too full of fire to understand that love also needs patience. They didn't leave because you were not enough. They left because neither of you had room inside yourselves to love each other the right way. Now, after all these years, you understand the value of honest emotion. If that person returns in this new cycle, they will come to a heart that knows how to keep what it treasures, no longer guided by fear or the impatience of the past. Sometimes the gift is an opportunity that opened softly before you, and you closed it with your own hands because you believed you weren't ready. A job, a project, an offer your heart secretly wanted. But at that time, you were thinking too much about responsibility, about the people you had to carry. You let it pass, believing it wasn't meant for you. Now that your flame is steadier, now that your light is no longer suppressed, that opportunity may return in a form shaped exactly for this new version of you. Sometimes the gift is a dream you put away because life demanded practicality, a dream that lit up your entire chest just by imagining it. You folded it, stored it, told yourself you had no time, no chance. It stayed there for years, never lost, only waiting for you to grow brave enough to open the drawer again. When your inner light rises, that dream will step out from the dark softly, as if it knows its time has finally come. Sometimes the gift is a path you once walked halfway before life pushed you somewhere safer. That path never closed. It simply went quiet, waiting for the day your confidence matched your calling. The gift returns not to test you, not to demand proof, not to make you repeat the past. It returns because the universe sees something in you that you sometimes overlook. Your inner strength has changed. You are no longer the one who suppresses your fire. You no longer move from fear. You no longer confuse love with sacrificing yourself. Within the quiet of this new cycle, you may feel as if an invisible hand is placing something familiar back into your palm. No rushing, no confusion, just the perfect ripeness of timing. From that point, a different stream of light begins to pull you forward, guiding you toward the place where the doors of abundance, love, and luck start opening in rhythm, with a soul finally ready to receive more than it ever believed it deserved. Something subtle is shifting in your life, like the first morning light touching old steps you never noticed before. After years of carving your own path through the dark, you are entering a time when the universe no longer tests your endurance. Instead, it chooses to stand beside you, like a quiet, steady companion, reminding you that the road ahead is no longer a battle but an opening. 3 doors begin to appear so softly they make no sound. They part the way leaves do when a gentle wind moves through, revealing places you've never walked, each one carrying its own color, its own invitation, its own chapter of growth. The first door belongs to the material life. In the past, you believed stability was something earned only through exhaustion. You ran, you strained, you tried to prove you were worthy of gaining what you needed. But abundance doesn't come to hearts that doubt themselves. It comes when you finally understand your worth is not measured in sacrifice but in the light you carry. When that light is freed, prosperity finds its way to you like water returning to its source, steady, calm, inevitable. Abundance never ran from you. It simply waited for you to stop running from yourself. The second door carries a different warmth, the warmth of connection. For years, you loved with a heart that didn't fully understand itself. You held too tightly. You feared losing. You sacrificed so much you forgot how you deserved to be loved. Now your energy has changed. No more shrinking so someone else feels safe. No more bending your heart to fit the shape of another. The one entering your life in this new cycle won't come to fill a void but to help you illuminate it. They will be strong enough to see all of you, peaceful enough not to fear your fire, mature enough to love without bargaining. This new love feels like a glass of cool water after a long, sun-soaked day, simple, yet it makes you realize you've never truly been loved the way you were meant to be. The third door has no shape at all. It's like a breeze unseen, yet leaving traces wherever it moves. This is the door of luck. Most people think luck is a game of fate. For you, luck appears when you live in alignment with your true nature. When your heart stops trying to please the world, luck begins to follow every step softly, like the universe nodding in your direction. Suddenly, things smooth out, paths open. What once felt confusing finds its way back to you without effort, as if life has been waiting for you to return to the rhythm that was always yours. In the space created by these 3 doors, the most beautiful truth is this: you no longer have to chase anything. Old exhaustion lifts away like dust blown off a windowsill. You only need to return to yourself without forcing, without rushing, without shrinking. Your wholeness alone is enough to pull the universe closer. And from this deep, peaceful place, another stream of light begins to draw your mind forward, as if a quiet guide wants you to know that the journey doesn't end at the doors. Greater forces are gathering ahead, forces shaped by the very stars you once believed were only there to look at, but have, in truth, been helping build the path you are finally ready to walk. A quiet movement is unfolding across the sky, as if 2 ancient forces have finally found the same language after years of standing on opposite shores. Every astrologer knows Mars as the primal fire in the Aries soul, the force that keeps you strong even when your spirit feels worn thin, and Saturn, the stern teacher, the disciplinarian, the presence that tests you in ways no one else ever sees. For 13 years, you've lived under Saturn's silent supervision, learning lessons that left no visible marks, growing through wounds only your heart understood. Saturn teaches through silence. No comfort, no clear punishment, no reward. It creates limits that force you to slow down, turn inward, face the parts of yourself you once avoided. Those limits often felt like restrictions, like obstacles, deliberately placed in your way. But when you look back, you'll see that every slowing, every delay was Saturn tempering your impulsive fire into a mature, steady light. Mars is nothing like that. Mars is the pulse in your bloodstream, the surge that pushes you forward, the feeling that you could remake the world with your own hands. Mars hates standing still. Mars doesn't compromise. Mars only knows how to ignite. But that very fire sometimes burned through the stability Saturn tried so carefully to build. Two forces, pulling in opposite directions, one urging you to sprint, the other asking you to pause. And then, November 2025 brings a moment few people ever get to witness: Mars and Saturn standing together on your side. A rare alliance, like two ancient drums finally falling into the same rhythm, creating a new frequency, deep, steady, powerful enough to lift you beyond every limit that once held you back. Your fire no longer flares wildly. Saturn shapes it, gives it structure, so every spark becomes direction, not destruction, not exhaustion, just pure guidance. From this point on, you hold something most people spend a lifetime trying to find: vision. Not the kind born from ambition, but the kind born from understanding yourself. You know what deserves your energy. You know what to release. Mars gives you the courage to move. Saturn gives every step purpose. Strength becomes sustainable. Faith becomes solid. What once felt hazy suddenly comes into focus without effort. This is also the season when you begin building things that last. Plans that were half-formed find their shape. Goals that felt impossible move within reach. The universe hands you not just opportunity, but the tools to turn opportunity into foundation, into something you can stand on for years to come. An empire. Not of status or wealth alone, but of a life built with self-respect, consistency, and the true light of your spirit. Many Aries will never experience this combination in their lifetime. So when it arrives for you, it isn't luck. It's the reward for all the years you stood in the storm without losing your heart. With Mars beside Saturn, you no longer fear stumbling or being misunderstood or watching people walk away from your strength. You become rooted like an ancient tree, bright like the first lantern lit in the dead of winter. As if a current of light is guiding you farther, you can feel the shift right down to your breath. Another gateway opens deep, still, inviting you to see that your light was never meant for you alone. It was meant to guide those still searching for their way through nights that have lasted far too long. A thin breath of air is slowly drifting into your life, like the sky releasing its first layer of morning light after a long stretch of darkness. November 2025 doesn't arrive with cheers or loud turning points. It comes through a deep silence, a silence so real you can finally hear your own true breathing after years of holding yourself in a guarded stance. The 13-year cycle closes in the same quiet way, soft, like a door settling shut when the wind changes direction. You suddenly realize the weight that has sat on your mind for so long is no longer clinging to you. The fear that once made you shrink like a fading ember is beginning to dissolve. You spent so much time doubting your inner strength, worried that your own light might somehow hurt someone else. But as the darkness behind you pulls away, another truth becomes clear. Your fire was made to guide, not to burn. That realization opens a new current within you, lifting you out of the survival zone that held you for so many years. November feels like the final breath before the old winter disappears. You sense yourself standing between two realms of energy. One, old, heavy with responsibility, hurt, silence. One new, wide open, calling to you from the deepest place in your soul. No more shrinking, no more bending yourself to make life easier for everyone else. The real flame inside you is rising, not from effort, not from force, but simply because its time has come. From this point on, you're no longer living just to get through each day. You're living to leave a mark. The fire of Aries was never meant to hide in a corner. It belongs on open roads, where its light can travel farther than your body ever could. You'll start to see that leadership isn't something you push yourself into. It appears when your spirit becomes still enough to know what to keep, what to release, what to offer. When you live in your true light, you lead without trying. November 2025 doesn't just open a new chapter. It resets the orbit of your entire life, a beginning you've waited for through 13 years of tests. It widens into the next 25 years, where your light and your will work together to build a path you deserved long ago. Nothing you lost was wasted time. Every delay was preparation, a way the universe built a solid foundation for this rising phase. What matters now is that you enter this cycle with a heart that finally knows its direction. No chasing noise, no living for approval. You begin to breathe in your own rhythm, stand in a strength that needs no display, carry a presence that makes others feel safe. When you stand in your light, every path ahead shifts color, becoming clearer than you ever imagined. November arrives like an answer to your years of persistence. The new doorway doesn't ask you to sacrifice anything. It only asks you to stand tall with the sacred spear in your hand, the symbol of a journey no longer bound by old fears or the limits of who you used to be. This time, it's your hand on the door. Your step across the threshold, not someone else's, not destiny acting for you, just you and the light you've spent years quietly preparing to carry into the future.